You might not remember that in addition to editing the videos and trying and failing to keep the other personas in check, it is part of my job as editing Matt to review internet-based content. But the internet exists in kind of a limbo land of storytelling because it can encompass any other medium of storytelling. Online you can find books, movies, television shows, games, and even some tape recordings of stage shows. But as far as storytelling that is unique to the internet that couldn't exist without it, well, that's a little tougher to pinpoint. It's still a relatively new medium, and we're still trying to figure out the best way to use the internet to its fullest advantage in storytelling. However, when it comes to online storytelling, there is one pretty obvious example that not only defines a lot of what we do here, but a lot of our place in the internet in general. I am, of course, referring to... Given how much of my humor and storytelling style is influenced by this site, it's kind of hard to believe I haven't really talked about it before now. I mean, E.T. made a mention of Strong Bad in his top 15 most likable villains list, but other than that, and maybe the odd oblique reference, nothing. But this website, with its unique tunes, games, characters, and so on, defined much of internet entertainment throughout the early 2000s. Given that, you'd think that after 2 decades, the humor would have become dated and stale, but that hasn't happened. Though the site isn't nearly as active today as it was 10 years ago, the content that's being produced is still incredibly funny. And you really can't say that about a lot of things that got their start in the early 2000s. But through a combination of timeless satire, likable and ridiculous characters, jokes and stories that reward loyalty while not shutting out newcomers, and just a touch of surreal weirdness, okay, maybe more than a touch, HomestarRunner.com has incredible staying power. So what is it really about this silly little website that keeps viewers coming back? Well, today, we're gonna dive in and find out.
HomestarRunner.net. It's .com.
Cut. A history on the making of HomestarRunner.com is easy enough to find. It's basically 2 college friends making fun of terrible children's books, and then 2 brothers using the characters to learn how to animate in Flash, and things kind of snowball from there. But I do want to provide some context for those of you in the post-millennial generation who might be watching. The Homestar Runner website got its start in 2000, at a time when we were just starting to realize the full potential of the internet. The idea that the internet was just a passing fad was pretty well debunked by this point, but a lot of the things that we now associate with the internet, sites like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, hadn't even been thought of yet. Even sites like Google and Amazon, which did exist back then, were just online tools rather than our online overlords. Today's internet is viewed as a tool for connections, and in the early 2000s, that idea was still very much in its early stages. The idea was there, but the technology wasn't, not yet. Internet speeds were still, at least by today's standards, painfully slow, and there were a number of things that internet just couldn't do yet, including streaming video. So half-hour videos like this one talking about a website would have been impossible. The technology that became popular in this time was Flash animation from Adobe. This was a way to put out interactive, video-based entertainment that would load completely and then play from beginning to end. Flash videos were to that day and age what YouTube videos are to this one, and this is important because HomestarRunner.com is still today a Flash website. But where most Flash animations were just one-off shared around on several different sites, the HomestarRunner.com animations were different. HomestarRunner.com created an entire world and a plethora of stories with the same set of characters, much like episodes in a television series. Never with any kind of overarching story or broad character development or anything like that, but with consistent and likable character traits and gags that cross over from one tune to the next, kind of like Looney Tunes. Apart from the animation aspect, Flash is also interactive, meaning that throughout whatever you're watching, you might have the option to click on something to make something else happen. This is a huge aspect of Homestar Runner in particular, and one of the things that makes it uniquely an online-based piece of storytelling. It lends itself to hidden Easter eggs, of which there are an abundance on HomestarRunner.com, as well as interactive menus, a couple of choose-your-own-adventure style stories, and most importantly, an ever-growing series of games. But that's enough context for now. Let's dive into the site itself.
HomestarRunner.com. Something.com.
This whole thing started because 2 college students basically wrote a children's book that they made about 15 copies of and handed out to friends and family just for a laugh. It was called Homestar Runner and the Strongest Man in the World contest, and it was basically just made to make fun of horrible children's books at the time. And in the early days of the website, most of the longer story-based tunes are simply continuing that story about the ongoing rivalry between Homestar Runner and Strong Bad. As such, the first few tunes focus mainly on more competitions between these two characters. A tag team wrestling competition, a jumping jack contest, a radish growing contest, sure. But it didn't take long for the Chapman brothers to figure out that the real humor came not from these competitions, but from looking at the characters and how they interacted between the competitions. Eventually, these were the stories that they focused on. In fact, the tunes featuring the wrestling competition and the jumping jack contest aren't even available on the main site anymore, although you can still find them with a little searching. And other early tunes from that time period, like The King of Town and The Search of Yellow Dello, that did look at moments between the competitions, got a revamp the following year. And in the tune A Job Well Done, not only is it a story that takes place between competitions, it features one of the secondary characters in a pivotal role, with Homestar and Strong Bad functioning as secondary characters. In the first few years of the site being active, the brothers Chaps established many of the aspects that would become staples of the site. In order to ensure a steady flow of content while the brothers worked on the longer, more complicated tunes, they would periodically upload shorter tunes, or shorts, usually one-off jokes or mock commercials that could be done quickly while they worked on more complicated things. They also uploaded special holiday tunes, most notably a Halloween tune where each of the characters dressed up as some figure from popular culture of the 70s, 80s, or 90s, often a rather obscure figure, a tradition they kept up each subsequent Halloween until 2010 and the beginning of the Great Hiatus. They also established the winter holiday of Decemberween, a holiday that falls on December 25th and bears an uncanny resemblance to another obscure holiday on that same day. In addition, Marzipan's Answering Machine, essentially an entirely audio tune where the various characters leave messages on the machine of the only girl character, became the site's first recurring feature. The site also had a handful of games, most of them some version of childhood games and toys, like the Speak and Spell, or Light Bright, or Mad Libs, or one of those magnetic hair creator things. It didn't take long for the main cast of characters to become established. Homestar Runner and Strong Bad, introduced in the first book, became the main hero and villain of the site. Homestar is the terrific athlete and lovable idiot who somehow always manages to stumble into winning, and Strong Bad, the equal part ineffectual schoolyard bully and criminal mastermind who tries so hard to beat Homestar but can just never quite manage it. Both Strong Bad and Homestar had sidekicks in the first book and eventually developed their own posse of sorts. Homestar has his best friend Pom Pom, who seems to live a secret second life which is way cooler than his life with Homestar, and yet he sticks around for some reason. Homestar also has his on-again, off-again girlfriend Marzipan, who started life as the dumb, grinning girlfriend character, but eventually evolved into another character with her own life and agenda, much of it involving playing her guitar and championing some ridiculous cause of some sort. For Strong Bad, we have his pet/minion/best friend, the Cheat, a little yellow animal who helps him to, well, cheat, and who, like Pom Pom, seems to live a secret second life beyond Strong Bad. Strong Bad also has two brothers, the square-shaped Strong Bad, who endearingly and innocently punches his way through any situation, and the elephant-footed Strong Sad, a whiny, depressed, and depressing nerd who is often a victim of his brother's antics. In addition, with this being a sports rivalry, we have a coach, the creepy wannabe rapper with a weird accent, Coach Z, and a concession stand owner, Bubs, the shady businessman and all-around fixer with questionable credentials. Also, Onion Bubs. Also, there's a king, because, sure, why not? And the king has a poopsmith, because, sure, why not? The website thus established, it then moved into the next era of its development, the Speemail. In 2001, the Chapmans created a new weekly feature wherein the sarcastic and vaguely villainous Strong Bad answered emails from fans. Much like the shorts and Marzipan's Answering Machine, in the beginning these were short, easy-to-make tunes, mostly featuring Strong Bad's voice in the back of his head in front of a computer screen. Strong Bad would answer the emails in sarcastic and unhelpful fashion, making fun of the writer's stupid questions, and the writer's spelling and grammar, and in general making the sort of snarky comments that many of us want to make but are simply too polite to. Because of this, and because it was the most consistent thing on the site at this point, the Strong Bad emails, or Speemails, quickly became the most popular thing on the site. And over time, they began to get more elaborate, cutting away from the computer more and more often, and coming to resemble regular tunes in their story and scope. The Speemails also came in a weird way to define the site itself, with many of the main features of the site coming from Spemails. When someone wrote in asking Strong Bad to make a comic featuring her and her friends, a new feature was born called Teen Girl Squad, where Strong Bad would draw stick figures of 4 girls, voice them in high falsetto, and find creative ways to kill them off. When someone wanted to know what Strong Bad would look like as a Japanese cartoon, it led to the 20xD6 universe, with each of the characters existing in a futuristic anime-like world. The following week, when someone wanted Strong Bad to draw a dragon, Trogdor the Burninator was born, creating a spin-off game, a spin-off of the spin-off game, and a mock movie trailer for the spin-off of the spin-off game. When Strong Bad was asked about video games, he made up a bunch of video games featuring himself. Not long after, those games were a part of the site. And perhaps most notably, in an early Spemail, Strong Bad was asked why he didn't just simply kill Homestar, except that the email writer misspelled Homestar as Homsar. Never one to miss an opportunity to make fun of someone, Strong Bad killed a little blue Homestar-like figure named Homsar. Except Homsar didn't die. He kept popping up in toons, often as an Easter egg, and eventually became the last main character in the cast of 12. Now, the other toons and shorts and so on didn't go away because of the Spemails, of course, but it's fair to say that a lot of the people who came to the site because of the Spemails really only watched the Spemails. It was during this time period that the Brothers Chaps were able to quit their full-time jobs and make a living off of merch sales from Homestar and the occasional freelance job. The brothers have described the period between 2002 and 2005 as their most creative period doing Homestar, and this is the point where the website, as it really became known, really took shape. Now, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when this shift took place, but sometime in between 2005 and 2006, the Spemails became so elaborate that they really didn't resemble shorts anymore, but rather full toons with much more elaborate plots and stories. Of course, we expected more elaborate Spemails when there was a milestone to be had, like the 100th Spemail or the Sesquicentennial, the 150th. But in 2006, there came a particularly elaborate Spemail which could have just as easily been one of the big toons on the site. At the end of a Spemail about cliffhangers, Strong Bad returns to his desk to find that his laptop computer has been lappy-napped. What followed was a 2-part saga of how Strong Bad was able to get his lappy back, altogether making for an almost 7-minute-long Spemail, the longest to that point. Even when the story wasn't that elaborate, we started to see stories happen across multiple Spemails. The most notable being the DNA evidence story, where throughout 5 or 6 emails, the characters made cryptic references to DNA evidence at some point during the email, with the references ultimately being tied together, sort of, in a separate toon. At the end of each email, a piece of old-style printer paper would come down, encouraging viewers to email Strong Bad. This paper became a character in its own right called The Paper, and in one email, the paper was replaced by an inkjet printer referred to as New Paper. But New Paper had a little bit of trouble learning the ropes of the job, and we saw his struggle at the end of the next few Spemails. We saw this elsewhere in the site too, with the line between big toon, short, holiday toon, and featured toon become blurrier and blurrier as the latter 3 became more and more elaborate and there was more crossover between the different kinds of toons. It was obvious that the Chapman brothers were taking full advantage of being able to do this full time, creating more and more intricate stories while never quite losing the basic humor of the website. It was during this time that the Chapmans collaborated with Telltale Games to create a 5-episode series of Wii and PC games called Strong Bad's Cool Game for Attractive People, which would allow gamers to play through a Strong Bad email story. Between these games, the videos the Chapmans created to advertise for them, and the crossover drama between Telltale Games and the fictional VEDSies games of the Homestar universe, this was by far the most elaborate and complex the stories on this site got. Things shifted again with the release of the long-anticipated 200th Spemail. Strong Bad answers the Spemail to find that it's actually addressed to Homestar, and we discovered that all along, Homestar Runner has had his own email response show, Pre-Mails, that he has been doing alongside Strong Bad's. It's both a retcon and kind of a parody of a retcon, but there's also a noticeable shift of the content being released at this time. Between the release of the 200th Spemail in 2008 and the Great Hiatus of 2010, only 5 more Spemails were released, with the focus going more towards the other toons on the site. This included a few episodes of Homestar's email show, but even when Strong Bad does wrest control of email responses back from Homestar, we still don't see a great deal from him. We see a similar shift in other toons on the site as well. In the Teen Girl Squad world, we are introduced to a spin-off called 4 Gregs, featuring the exploits of 4 nerdy boys in the same universe. Marzipan's answering machine was commandeered by Strongstad for an episode where he house sat for Marzipan. And in 2009, in lieu of any new Spemails, Strong Bad announced a new program called Spemail Your Eyes Entertainment, wherein he pointed out that you could make any toon on the site into a Spemail. All you had to do was put Strong Bad and his computer on either side of it. A nice little commentary on how similar the tunes on the site had become at that point. However, as 2009 faded into 2010, it became increasingly obvious, though no one wanted to admit it, that the site was starting to wind down. In the last few tunes before the great hiatus, you could really start to feel the creative energy run out. The Chapmans had put a great deal of time and energy into the site for the last decade, especially in 2008, and so really it's kind of remarkable that they were only just now starting to run out of juice. Though they never said outright that they were going to be ending Homestar, and they did say a number of times that they'd always planned to come back to Homestar, it kind of seemed to fans like Homestar Runner might be done for good. Both of the Chapman brothers took on new jobs, and the site languished, unupdated, for 3 years and 3 months. Finally, on April 1st, 2014, the moment loyal fans had been waiting for. The site released a tune, basically commenting on how long it had been since they'd updated the site, and trolling fans a little by not releasing a new SPI-mail. Updates over the next few years would be sporadic, and the site wouldn't be nearly as active as before, but the Chapmans had returned and were releasing content. Much of the content, like the next SPI-mail and the next answering machine, were commenting on how long it had been, but there was also a new issue in the Homestar Runner universe. The fact that the Flash technology that had made up the website was becoming obsolete, and in 2020, Adobe was completely ending it. So over the past year or so, the Chapmans have been focusing most of their energy on updating the website for the 2010s. They've been slowly but surely uploading their old tunes to the HomestarRunner.com YouTube channel, releasing some content on Strong Bad's Twitter account, and even the website itself has gotten its first facelift since 2003. In addition, the brothers Chaps are in the process of releasing a Trogdor board game, which got a ridiculous amount of support on Kickstarter. The tunes are still coming on the site, of course, at a much less regular rate to be sure, but it seems as though the break was good for the Chapmans, and the content they are releasing is, I think, some of the best and funniest the website has ever seen. Ultimately, the site is, like I said before, a series of tunes not unlike the Looney Tunes, with the same set of characters in hilarious situations. So the basic level of humor that we're looking at here is the same sort of humor that you would find in a cartoon, with some physical slapstick-style humor, some meta humor, but mostly character-based humor. It all kind of comes down to that initial competition between Strong Bad and Homestar, and in a way, the website kind of becomes a battleground for that rivalry. In the beginning, Homestar was the good guy and always won against Strong Bad and his cheating. Then Strong Bad got his own show and the tide began to turn, with Strong Bad emerging as the most popular character and basically running a good portion of the website. Eventually, the most elaborate tunes and games from the site were because of Strong Bad. Then, in the era of free mails, Homestar made a comeback, and there was a little more equilibrium between the two sides. And now, following the great hiatus, Homestar and Strong Bad seem more concerned with working together to preserve the website and their way of existing. All of this is taking kind of a surreal turn, so let's talk about surreal humor.
I am Homestar, and this is the website.
Okay, so first and foremost, the characters themselves. What are they exactly? I mean, most of them are vaguely human-shaped, but you've got Homestar, Marzipan, the King of Town, and Homstar with no visible arms, in spite of the fact that they pick up things all the time. Strong Bad seems to have boxing gloves for hands, through which he is still mysteriously able to type, and his face is that wrestling mask. Strong Mad is a big square, and Strong Sad has elephant feet, and even though they're brothers, none of the brothers Strong look anything like one another. Pom Pom bounces like a balloon, Marzipan is broom-shaped, the King of Town seems to talk through his mustache, the Cheat's physiology just plain baffles me. I mean, most cartoons at least resemble something familiar. And it would be one thing if they were just drawn like that, I mean it is a cartoon after all, but they're also aware and make repeated comments about their abnormalities. Also, it's surprisingly easy to just create new characters and universes and realities. Like, Trogdor was just a silly drawing Strong Bad did, and then it was a video game, and another video game, and a possible movie based on a video game, and also apparently a character in his own right. Strong Bad made up a bunch of video games with him in them, and then they existed. In-universe. Homestar started out as a joke and evolved into his own character with his own history and personality. But probably the most interesting example of this is the Cheat Commandos, a recurring and kind of unofficial feature of the site. In the Strong Bad email army, the Cheat dresses up as a commando named Firebird. I know, not a good commando name. As part of the story. Later, a mock commercial is made for a series of toys called Cheat Commandos. And of course, if there's toys, there's a silly children's TV series that the toys are based on. A breakfast cereal followed, and then finally we saw episodes of the show itself begin to appear. This was all well and good, but it didn't stop there. Eventually, we were introduced to a character called Crack Stuntman, a voice actor who did one of the characters on the Cheat Commandos show. And he became his own character as well, with his own behind-the-scenes story. And we even saw that character character interacting with the Homestar Runner characters. So what started as just a cheap wearing a silly costume and having a silly name snowballed into a whole other universe, which then created its own universe that intersected with the Homestar Runner universe. And you guys think I'm complicated. But all of this pretty much just goes back to the meta aspects of the site. HomestarRunner.com is first and foremost a website, and the characters are aware that it's a website. They're aware of their own fictionality. But even just beyond that, their world being specifically a website is a big part of the humor and the story. In one memorable short, Strongbad and Homestar appear in front of what used to be the "This page is not available" screen on Internet Explorer, talking about how the website has crashed. And this was about the same time that traffic on the site greatly increased because of the spee-mails. Numerous references are made to the audience coming to the website to see Strongbad rather than Homestar. Whenever there's a long period of time when the website isn't updated, some reference is made to it, the most notable being the first video after the great hiatus, which shows the welcome page literally falling apart. And recently there have been a number of references to the impending end of Flash, the very thing that makes the Homestar Runner universe. In that way, the surreal elements kind of make sense. This is its own world and operates on its own rules, much like any other cartoon. Characters looking the way they do, new universes and characters popping into existence thanks to other elements of the website, and everyone treating the internet as though it's just their world. It all makes a weird sort of sense, blurring the line between reality and surreality in a way that ends up being surprisingly funny. Homestar Runner proved to be the precursor of a certain type of humor that's becoming more and more popular in mainstream popular culture, something that a friend of mine once referred to as neo-Dadaist. This humor is built off of an almost Monty Python-esque level of randomness and pointlessness. It puts things out there that are just so surreal and ridiculous that we can't help but laugh at them, and yet at the same time they also make a weird sort of sense. Now, Homestar Runner didn't create this type of humor, of course. It's been around for years, but Homestar Runner was tapping into this type of humor and what we as viewers found funny long before mainstream popular culture caught on. So we've now looked at two basic types of humor, the cartoon character-based humor and the surreal humor, both of which you can find in pretty much any cartoon. But there is one more level of humor that makes Homestar Runner stand out and really, I think, gives it its staying power.
Now it's social satire and not just some weird crap that you watch.
Homestar Runner started first and foremost as a parody, specifically a parody of the horrible children's books that Mike Chapman and Greg Zobel found one summer while browsing a bookstore. And by and large, that's what Homestar Runner remains. Beyond all the cartoon antics, the slapstick, the weird characters, the surreal oddness, there's a backbone of parody and satire, simply making fun of the things that we grew up with, the commercials, the toys, the games, the shows. The early days of the site mostly parodied entertainment for young children, mostly picture books and toys. But over time, as Strongbad's influence on the site increased, we started to see different content being parodied. One of the big sources of parody on the site is commercials. The Brothers Chaps have infamously never accepted any advertising revenue or sponsorship for any of the work they do on Homestar Runner, because that would mean having to put real advertisements on their site, overshadowing the fake advertisements that make up so much of it. Advertising products like Fluffy Puff Marshmallows with their frightening mascot Marshy, the fast food chain Blubbos with the incomprehensible drive-through whale, the Cheat Commandos toys, cereal, show, and Crack Stuntman's ill-advised non-profit Pistols for Pandas, and of course, Bub's concession stand and the various goods and services he offers. Holiday tunes often parody some aspect of the holiday or some sort of show or special that may be shown during the holiday. For Thanksgiving one year, the tune featured Strongbad and the Cheat trying to find something good on TV that wasn't football, flipping through the sort of programming you might find, including a brief look at a special Thanksgiving episode of Cheat Commandos, an infomercial from the King of Town about the dangers of not frying a turkey, and a Black Friday-esque commercial from Bub's concession stand, which was funny at the time, but hits a little too close to home now. The Decemberween tune, Death-Defying Decemberween, parodies the sort of syrupy, saccharine holiday specials you tended to find on TV in the 80s and 90s during the holidays. A Halloween tune parodies a horror flick where the characters get picked off one by one, and Strongbad's return to spee-mailing on April 1st led to a list of parodies of the sorts of pranks you typically see online on April Fool's Day. In fact, it's the spee-mails that parody a lot of this stuff, unsurprising since Strongbad's favorite thing to do is make fun of things. A couple of episodes make fun of children's television programming, one making Homestar the star of his own television program. In one episode, Strongbad makes up a story about the original Bubs, lampooning the tendency of some shows to replace characters with completely different actors in the hopes that no one will notice. Also, Onion Bubs. And of course, the 200th female is essentially making fun of retconning. But Strong Bad being who he is, two of the things he loves to make fun of most are nerd culture and indie culture. One episode reveals that Strong Sad, ironically enough, is the head of a female fan club called the Delete Heads, and the email makes fun of both fan clubs and fan fiction. In another, he looks at the difference between indie and independent films, using characteristic hyperbole and lack of true understanding, while nonetheless finding some agreeable truth in the world of independent filmmaking. In still another episode, Strong Bad discovers a new band called Sloshy, courtesy of Strong Sad, and after coming to terms with how different Sloshy is from his beloved metal bands like Limousine, finds that he likes the band, only to immediately reject them upon realizing that they are not, in fact, a metal band. Both Limousine and Sloshy stuck around as continuing commentaries on their respective genres. In fact, music is a big part of the Homestar universe too, each song and band acting as a satire of the style of music it represents. And this, I think, really gets to the core of Homestar Runner's popularity, because most of the things that it's making fun of are also nostalgic for our generation. They're things that we of the late Gen X, early millennial generation grew up with, and the Brothers Chaps are able to find that balance between admiring a thing and also recognizing that it has flaws that should be made fun of. The fact that the character who's making fun of these things also happens to be kind of a jerk helps as well. But the one thing that Homestar Runner seems better able to make fun of than anything else is itself. A good chunk of the humor on the site is self-deprecating, and you can tell that for all of the things that the site pokes fun at, it never takes itself too seriously. In a recent tune celebrating the 20th anniversary of the original children's book, the Brothers Chaps dug out the second story they wrote for Homestar and the gang. A story called Homestar Runner Goes for the Gold, which never saw the light of day. They had Homestar and Strong Bad read through it and make fun of it in the same way that they make fun of anything in popular culture. And in a way, HomestarRunner.com has become a part of popular culture, and so it kind of makes sense that one of the things they would need to make fun of is themselves. It's this quality that is probably the most endearing aspect of the site. The Brothers Chaps basically stumbled upon internet fame. They never intended for this site to blow up in the way that it did. They were just doing it for fun. You can tell, especially in the early days, that they're just putting together content that makes them laugh. The site had no advertising other than word of mouth, and even when the Brothers Chaps were able to quit their day jobs and do this full time, it was very much with the attitude of, look, we know this isn't going to be sustainable forever, so let's just enjoy this while we can. They made their money primarily off of merch sales, t-shirts and mugs and figurines and DVDs and even a CD music album. And they never did anything to sacrifice the integrity of the site, never accepting sponsorships or advertising revenue so as to keep their world separate from the real world. The closest they came was Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people, and even that is very much in line with the Homestar Runner universe. When they went on extended hiatus, even though there was no official explanation, I feel as though most people understood that the creativity had just run dry. That after doing the site for so long and so consistently, the brothers were just burned out. You can kind of see it happening in the last couple tunes before the hiatus. It just doesn't have the same joyful creative spirit that the other tunes had. The brothers turned instead to other projects, things they were able to do in part because of the work they had done on Homestar Runner. We may not have liked the great hiatus, but to me it was better than the alternative. Trying to force through content just to make a buck, even though the creativity and the joy of making it isn't there anymore. There's something very admirable and very rare about that kind of purity of intention, about simply wanting to have fun and make people laugh and stay true to the world you've created. It's why, after even 2 decades, the site still entertains us and still makes us laugh. Homestar Runner will never be what it was in the early 2000s simply because that era of the internet is over. But as long as that purity of intention is still there, HomestarRunner.com will continue to make us laugh for years to come. Also Onion Bubs. So I didn't even get to cover half of the stuff on this site. There's just so much enjoyable content on this website. If you've got a taste for bizarre cartoon and nostalgia-based humor, I would definitely recommend checking out HomestarRunner.com if you have not already. If you want to get kind of a primer on the sort of things that you can expect on the site, I've actually put together a playlist that you'll be able to go to at the end of this video. It's just a list of 20 tunes that I think best represent the site and just tunes that I happen to like. So now I have emerged from the shadows of my editing to actually do a video, and for those of you that wanted to see Editing Matt making more videos, here I am. So, hi.
Isn't that great?
I can't take it anymore.